Hey Internet, Eric here. Well, a few days ago, it was Friday the 13th. I'm a huge Friday the 13th fan. I tried my best to watch and review a film, to upload it, and a film from the Friday the 13th series, to upload it and stay relevant with the time. And instead, if you follow my channel, you saw instead I got a little drunk and I did a few rants. But I was able to get a viewing of one of these films in, so today I'm discussing Friday the 13th Part 2. Kids. Came out in 1981, 1 year after the original from 1980. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I discuss plot spoilers and specific scenes, and especially with the Friday the 13th series that is known for its creative kills, I will probably spoil a lot of character deaths. But again, 1981, part 2 in a series of 10 initial films, a crossover with Freddy, and a remake. So if you haven't seen this one, watch at your own risk. Alright, basic plot synopsis is, it's now 5 years after the events of part 1, and we are introduced to a lot of would-be camp counselors. Paul, played by John Fury, is the head of this retreat, training new would-be camp counselors. Eventually he tells the story of what happened in part 1, and he says how Camp Crystal Lake, Camp Blood, is off limits. Two of the counselors, of course, are stupid. They go investigate. They're arrested and sent back to the retreat. It's the last night, or at least the last weekend before training officially starts, and half the camp goes out to get drunk, the other half stays home and deals with Jason. Alright. I absolutely love the first one, and this I think is a really good follow-up to the original. We'll get to the characters. There's quite a bit. We have Paul, like I said, played by John Fury. He's the head of this retreat. Very likable guy. He's got a good rapport with all of the counselors. One of them that kind of gives them shit, the counselors, but motivates them. He has a good rapport with Ginny, the final girl, played by Amy Steele. They have a pseudo-romantic relationship. I don't know if it's just kind of a summer fling or they really are boyfriend-girlfriend. They got a great chemistry. She gives him shit. He gives her shit back. Like she shows up late for the meeting because she's having car trouble. He takes her into the office, and she says, "I said sorry, didn't I?" "Did you?" "I'm sorry." Just little stuff like that. And then when he has to get into it with Jason, he's not some pushover like a lot of these males are in this series. He'll take Jason on, like Jason's about ready to attack Ginny. He grabs Jason from behind and takes him to the ground. They're fist fighting and stuff like that. He does real well. I like the Paul character. Ginny, the final girl, played by Amy Steele, very likable, strong in some parts. She's real good at playing the damsel in distress, but when she has to take on Jason, she does real well. The iconic scene, there's a line dropped in the beginning of this film where she studied child psychology or something like that. So they bring up, there's a scene where they're all at the bar, they bring up where she asks, is he some frightened retard or a child trapped in a man's body? So she has that running through her head, and at one of the final iconic scenes, she walks into Jason's shack. He's living in the woods now. We'll get to that. And there's this monument, or what have you, to Jason's mother built in there. Like there's dead bodies around this big giant tree stump, it looks like, and Jason's mom's head is right there, along with the sweater she was wearing from part 1 when she was decapitated. So Ginny puts on the sweater and pretends to be Mrs. Voorhees and tricks Jason a little bit. And like I said, it's the iconic scene. She does real well talking to Jason calmly, trying to trick him, and I really like how the director Steve Miner got Betsy Palmer to come back So while Amy's saying this, they also have Betsy saying the same thing and kind of like a, not a flashback, but I don't know if it's a dissolve or, I don't know technical terms, but Amy's talking and then it morphs somewhat, you know, as much as a 1981 slasher film can do, into Betsy Palmer saying it. So, like I said, Ginny, Amy Steele, really likable character. The only other really memorable character, for me at least, is Ted. I think his name is Ted. He's played by Stu Charno. Stu Charno, you know, he was the go-to guy in the 80s to be the goofy guy. He's the goofy guy here. He's in Christine and Just One of the Boys and Once Bitten. You know, you see his face, you know who he is, and he's literally there to be the comic relief. He makes a couple jokes, plays a couple pranks, but he does it real well. It's not ad nauseum. It's not grating. Really likable. The other girls are there to look pretty. Kristen Baker plays Terry. She's the one in the booty shorts and like the half shirt. She's there to look pretty. Same with Lauren Marie Taylor. She plays Vicki. She's who I would pick. A lot of people, they pick Kristen Baker because of, the boobs and the butt. I think I like Lauren Marie Taylor as Vicki better because, she's got that innocent vibe to it until she sees Mark and she knows what she wants, and then it all comes out. And she's very sympathetic. Her death I like a lot because, they do this build up. She's going to have sex with Mark, the guy in the wheelchair, and she does this really sexy undressing scene, changes, into sexier underwear, goes outside to find a hairbrush, of course. And we see a POV shot of Jason watching her, and like she's in her underwear, so it's very vulnerable, and nothing happens. And then eventually she goes to find Mark, who's already taken care of, and she walks in a bloody room and finds some dead bodies, and then Jason pops up out of the bed. And I really like this death because it's kind of drawn out, but it's literally, you see Vicki, our POV is like Jason's POV, so we see Vicki after she gets slashed in the leg in a really cool effect. She backs up against the wall. She's got a great scream. And she's just, shuddering and scared. And we see just, Jason's hand, complete with fucked up thumbnail, holding the butcher knife. And he's just slowly, methodically walking to her as you just see her crying and cringing in the background. So, really likable character and a sad death. Other than that, the others are throwaways. Like I said, they throw a guy in a wheelchair, so when Jason takes him out in a really cool way, which I won't spoil, you get the feeling like Jason will take out anybody. They're killing a dude in a wheelchair, so they'll take out anybody. There's a double impalement after a couple's done having sex, and they get speared through the bed, which I heard was stolen from an Argento film. Don't know, don't care. Still a really cool effect with the spear going through, and you see the little drop of blood, little, not really a drop of blood, but you get a little blood flow through there. Great deaths. We'll talk about Jason. And this is before he's Zombie Jason in Part 6. He's really, really scary. And not as in, spooky. He's scary because he's human, and he's apparently he hasn't drowned. He didn't drown back in the 50s. Crystal Lake is a big fucking lake. I don't know if he got swept to the other side. They never really explain it in the series. And apparently he's been living on animals and vegetation. Now he's dressed like a hillbilly. He wears I don't think it's a potato sack, but it's like a bed sheet over his face with one eye hole, cut out. So he's just this hillbilly living in the woods. And what I like is, he's still human, so he feels pain. He feels pain. Like Ginny in this fantastic chase scene that goes on for a long time, but it's never boring. It's very intense with Harry Manfredini's wonderful score. He gets kicked in the nuts, and he gets slashed on the hand with a knife, and this and that, and he falls to the ground. He grabs his hand. He feels the pain. And he runs. A lot of these fans You know, they're like, Jason doesn't run. He's this slow, methodical. Bullshit. Watch part 2. Watch part 3. Watch part 4. Fucker runs. And he's... Imagine this. Deformed hillbilly chasing you with a pitchfork in the woods. Running after you. Not saying a word. That's what I like. To this Harry Manfredini score. Love it. You know, Ginny, you know... She's scared. She gets in the car. She can't get the car started. Jason pops up to see her. And then he disappears. And you're wondering, where the hell is he? And then suddenly you hear him on the roof. And he stabs a pitchfork through the roof of, like, I guess she has a convertible. So it's got the roof that's really cheaply made. And then he stabs through the pitchfork. And then he reaches his hand down. And he's reaching for her. Fantastic, intense scene. And... Warrington Gillette is credited as Jason. But Jason, you know, Warrington, to my knowledge, there's this big controversy. He only played Jason in the makeup, you know, when he does the boo scare at the end. Kind of like, you know, the nod to part 1. And, ooh, needed some ice in that one. Steve Dashowitz? He goes by Steve Dash for short. He's like the stunt coordinator. Played Jason for like 80% of the film when it's all the running scenes and this and that. Sadly, he never got credit for it. He's fantastic as Jason. I love it. So the characters are great. Jason is scary. I love it. I just praised Harry Manfredini's score. Steve Miner directed. He does some good cuts in this. Like Terry the hot chick. She is killed off screen. But she has to deal with this perv, you know, and I hate him. I think his name is Scott. The first time we see Terry, she's wearing these booty shorts, and she's wearing like a Mickey Mouse shirt cut off, so you see her belly, and she's walking, and then you get this POV shot of her butt, and then some asshole hits her in the butt, you know, slingshot-wise, and it ends up being Scott, and he looks at her, and he's like, winks at her like a fucking total ass, and then... He gets really pervy. Like she does this nude scene where she goes and skinny dips at Crystal Lake and he steals her fucking clothes. So she's coming out bare ass naked. You see everything, full frontal. And she's very vulnerable. It's a vulnerable scene. You know, she's wondering where she's at. She's shuddering from the cold. And then he's like, forget something, missing something. He's holding up her clothes and he throws it at her and he's laughing. What a piece of shit. So when he finally gets it, you're like, yes. In a scene where it's a cool effect because he's caught in a snare trap and he gets the Jason, you know, the knife across the throat and the blood's pouring, you know, upside down, even though he's accidentally cut with the wrong side of the knife. It's a cool effect regardless. Anyway, back to Kristen Baker. She finds him, and you know he's hanging from the tree. And she looks at him. She screams, and then she turns around, runs to the camera, like right to the audience, screams as loud as she can, and then it's cut to someone playing a loud guitar to the group at the bar getting drunk. I love that cut. Great. One of my favorite deaths. And everybody praises Marks, the paraplegic, which is cool. I just said I loved, you know, the Vicki death because of how sympathetic it is. And, of course, you know, the double impalement is cool. My favorite death is actually the cop. Now, this is the cop that picked up Jeff and Sandra, you know, the two that were caught snooping around Camp Blood. And he's driving back to the station, and he sees someone jump out in front of him. And he thinks someone else is snooping, you know, at Camp Crystal Lake. Of course, it ends up being Jason. And we do have, this is a gripe, we do have a long, drawn-out chase scene. We have this middle-aged, fat cop chasing Jason through the woods. It could have been cut by maybe 30 seconds because it goes on for a little too long. But what's cool is we need this scene because he ends up at Jason's shack. You know, Jason's got a shack in the woods. Like I said, he's now a hillbilly for some reason. And he opens up the door and we see, you know, toilet. Jason's got a toilet for some reason, and just shit all over the ground. And he opens up the room, which I mentioned before, which ends up being the room to Mrs. Voorhees' head. And I love this because of the quick cuts. Jason, you see behind him just a hammer, and the claw of the hammer is facing towards the back of the cop's head. That gets nailed in the back of the head. You get a quick, really cool effect of it going into the back of the head, and then just the reaction of the cop screaming and then falling down with the hammer embedded into his head. Just the quick cut, the slow buildup of the hammer behind the head. It's my favorite death scene in this film. Now, here's something cool. Friday the 13th films are known for, in the beginning, reintroducing the audience to the previous film. Well, we have Alice back. Alice was the survivor from the first movie. And this takes place a couple months after the first one. And the majority of the film after this scene takes place 5 years later. The timeline gets confusing with these films. And Alice is at home in her apartment, and she's dreaming and having a nightmare, and that way we're showing her confrontation with Mrs. Voorhees. And, you know, the decapitation from the first film. And it's cool that, you know, she gets the phone call from her mom, and she's saying that, you know, it is Adrienne King, the same actress from the part one. And she's telling her mom that, you know, she just needs time alone. And you see she's still doing her sketches that was brought up in the first film. And the sketch that you see is obviously Brenda, the one that was cut up and thrown through the window from part one. So that's another cool nod. And then, of course, she has the feeling that someone's watching her. And then eventually she opens up the fridge, and Jason's mom's head is in there. It's a good boo scare, even though you're wondering, wouldn't her head be more a little deformed after 2 months? And then she gets a cool death. I really like her death. But it also makes you wonder how the hell Jason tracked her down if he's been this fucking hillbilly living in the woods. How does he know where Alice lives? They didn't have Google Maps or Google White Pages or anything back in 1981. Anyways, really cool nod to the first film. Plus we get to see Alice back. Really liked it. There really isn't a lot that I don't like about this one. Being like, other than the Scott character, you know, the fucking pervy rapist wannabe guy. He's the one that you don't want, you know, hanging around the high schools or the middle schools. But don't like his character. But when he gets it, it's good. So it's okay. I'm not gonna get into it, but the whole muffin scenario, the dog, Kristen Baker's dog. That was stupid, but it's very minimal. Overall, this is one of the stronger ones in the series. I really, really liked it. Like I said, they got Betsy Palmer back as well as Adrienne King. Great effects when you finally see Jason without the sack. That big jump scare at the end is still really, really good. The ambiguous ending with a character that you don't see, that I won't say. Still great. Chase scene with Amy Steele. 90% of the characters are either likable or sympathetic. Really good gore. Overall, yeah, really, really good follow-up. Friday the 13th Part 2. Highly, highly recommended. I love the Harry Manfredini score, like I said. And then Steve Miner, the way he did certain cuts. A scary human Jason. Highly recommend Friday the 13th Part 2. So, if you love the original and you've only seen the original, and they never intended for a sequel, Victor Miller, who wrote Part 1, really intended to have Jason drown in the lake. But it made money, so in 1980 we gotta have a sequel. So, yeah, highly recommend Friday the 13th Part 2. Even though my former boss, Danny Carnage, really, really hates Friday the 13th Part 2 for some reason. I don't remember. I'm going to personally send this to you, and I would like you to comment on the page below and tell me why. But for some reason, he hates Part 2. I really enjoy it, and I will say it's one of the better ones. So I will say thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell the hobo in the woods to check me out. Not like that. Don't check me out like that. Check out my playlist for other things I've done. I'm not going to get into it. Click the stupid bell to know that I uploaded this video and future videos. And I will say cheers. Oh! I talked about bringing back Betsy Palmer and Adrienne King. Crazy Ralph is back. Crazy Ralph is in it for maybe 2 minutes. And Crazy Ralph is taken out in a cool way. So, on that note, I'll say cheers. And it's got a death curse. They didn't believe me. You're doomed. You're all doomed.